Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of And Still Boxing Australia. Quick little down on the music here. So we're going to go over a bit of a post-fight reaction and a behind the scenes of what we witnessed and was privy to on the David Nyika, one of the two, versus OPETAIA fight up in the sunny Gold Coast. So obviously up there working it quite a bit. Pretty fun. Really like to thank Tasman Fighters for inviting us up there and making sure we had access to everything that we could. It was pretty star-studded, I'm not going to lie to you. There was a 5-day sort of event essentially, and there was something on every day and some very, very interesting things, and we met some very, very interesting people. So let's just get started. Day one. So day one was essentially the Q&A, right? And it was really interesting because we're all staying at the same hotel, all right? We all managed to stay there thanks to Tasman Fighters. And we got to meet David Nyika's family, okay? And let me tell you, they are like a bunch of amazing people. I remember hitting Noel Thornberry, who is his promoter and his coach, essentially, and they were said, listen, come down for a yarn, have a laugh. Fantastic, went down. We actually also met Jackson John England, so big shout out to him because he's actually the most fantastically nice person you'll ever see. Anyway, went down and we're having a talk and having those conversations, and I'm just trying to draw something out of it. I'm like, it's not going to go online, but essentially, hey, what can you tell me about the game plan? Like, OPETAIA is a beast. He's the man. And I'm going to be honest, like a lot of people out here, we probably didn't really know that much about David Nyika before this. Been on DAZN a few times, known in New Zealand because he was an Olympian and whatnot. But I'm not going to say I was an expert on him. And I tried to crunch as much tape as I could beforehand. We only could kind of make an assessment on what we knew essentially from those previous fights, which he was just demolishing them. He was, caught in that transitional period. Anyway, during that time, we sat down, had these conversations, and they were just the nicest bunch of people, so genuine. And we actually privy also after the Q&A to see David's bit of training, hitting the pads, and he's obviously master boxer as well. And we have a bit of a cough here from the creative director Amanda. You're right there, Amanda. She nods and gives us the thumbs up. Anyway, so I was privy to that, and the hand speed was good. The man looks like the goddamn Terminator. Let me tell you, he was warming up, and I want to stay out of his way. And also, Jackson John England was sitting there doing some drills and stuff like that, doing some shadow boxing. That man is quick. That man is one hell of a boxer. Anyway, when we seen him warming up, and he was so lean and ready for this fight, and I'll tell you what, his deltoids, his delts, they look like they had six packs. I'm like, what is going on here? This man is a freak athlete. And he's super nice. He's like, yeah, man, it's all good. No worries. And his New Zealand accent now. Obviously currently fighting out of Australia. So we're very happy with that. Anyway, so we definitely got to have a little bit of behind the scenes in that sense. And they were like, listen, they're going to surprise the world. There has a potential there. All right. So that was the first kind of interactions. So day two, we went over to the open workout. So the open workout, obviously a lot of this was on our Instagram and online. And you'll see a lot of it if you jump over to some other the videos in the in our channel here. Anyway, so he's done the workout, and we're just filming it, kind of getting a feel for everything, and checking all the boxes out. It was super hot. A lot of people don't know it was super hot out. And then where it was in Pacific Fair on the Gold Coast, this brand new like shopping mall, like state of the art stuff. But the sun was coming down, open roof, and it was absolutely cooking. They're like, we're not going to probably get these people in these fighters in the ring for too long, considering that it's 1,000,000 degrees out and they've got to fight in a couple of days. So they're just going to do a little bit. Anyway, there's interview opportunities afterwards. All right, everyone's coming through. All right, now it's getting closer and the intensity's building. They just done the face-off beforehand, like the day before. Anyway, they come in, and then I'm like, oh, here's an opportunity to talk to him, all right? David Nyika comes. I'm like, hey, man, what do you think for the fight? Just some standard question, because he was coming through, and he was like, yeah, good, man. I go, are you ready for the fight? He's like, yeah, I am. And I'm like, any further words? He's like, no. He gave me like 30 seconds. Obviously, he's dialed in now. He's a nice guy, but, he's getting ready for the fight. And I think he's a bit of like his personality is a bit more of a low-key guy, like I just want to chill out, not too much media and things like that. But, speaking to his team, and when we walk by him, they'd be all so nice. So we're getting definitely a soft spot for David here. And I'll tell you what, the creative director that we have here, Amanda, was definitely getting a soft spot for him. He was so nice. And he's very, very handsome man. I go, he belongs on the... I think he belongs on the run, the catwalk, as opposed to the ring. No, he's definitely fantastic. Anyway, but let me tell you a Jai OPETAIA story. Okay, so I was speaking to his dad beforehand, and I'm like, hey, is Jai always this intense? And he goes, man, I'll tell you what, bro. He goes, Jai, when it comes to fight week, the dude, and this is his dad speaking, and coach, he was like, hey, listen, the guy's always intense. The guy's always dialed in. And I tell him to go, chill out, bro. And he goes, he just doesn't. He just doesn't. And I'm like, yeah, I can tell that. The eyes on this bloke, crazy eye Jai. Let me tell you, I'm like, this guy is so dialed in. He's a predator. He doesn't have a name. I definitely think we should make one up, like the Predator or something like that. Something fun we can definitely get. So I went and spoke to Jai. And I'm like, all right, I want to ask some different questions. So I said to him, I go, hey, Jai, came in with a little area where they were doing interviews. And I'm like, listen, so historically speaking, people that have taken up fights last minute, that's been known to cause upsets, cause dramas. And he looks at me with those eyes. He looks at me and he goes, bro, why are you talking about other fights? And I go, well, sorry to premise it. I go, listen, they've known to cause upsets, but I'll give you an example. I go, look at Tim Tszyu versus Fundora. I go, what about that? Then he looks at me. He goes, bro, why are you talking about other fights? Why the fuck are you talking about other fighters? It doesn't matter. It only matters about January 8th and what I'm going to do. And I'm like, oh shit, champ. I go, oh, sorry, man. I didn't say sorry, but I was a bit rattled. I'm like, I go, oh, it's just an example. He's like, doesn't matter, bro. It's all about January 8th. And I'm like, my God, I'm rattled. I got a little bit rattled. I'm so awkward sometimes. I'm just like, yeah, no, all good, man. No, that sounds good. Anyway, I'm like, hey, run away. So we did that. Anyway, so day 3, we had the press conference here and, they were doing their thing. And then little do I know, Eddie Hearn rocks up. Big Eddie Hearn, big boss Eddie Hearn. So me personally, I've been a big Eddie Hearn guy for a long, long time. And I see him. And I kind of like mull over and he's talking to people. And obviously people are around him. They want to get to know him, talk to him and stuff like that. Anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm like I was looking at Eddie. I'm like, oh, this is hectic, bro. I was rattled, not rattled, but just excited, to for him to be there. So I said, hello, how you going? And he goes, oh yeah, I recognize you. From online. And at that stage, I blanked out and I'm like, oh yeah, man. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Me too? What do you mean? Of course I recognize myself from online. God. Embarrassing. Anyway, we got talking. We did an interview with him, and then I remember a few people online. We put the interview up, and a few people online. They're like, "Oh, it could be Eddie Hearn's brother." Things like that. I'm like, "Oh, that's nice." But then a bunch of people are like, "Oh, looks nervous. Looks a bit awkward." I wasn't awkward. I wasn't nervous. I was just excited. Anyway, we had to start it again and cut the front of it because I'm like, "This is Eddie Hearn." Guy McKinnon here from Men Still Boxing. I'm here with Eddie Hearn. Eddie, how are you, sir? I'm Q&A afterwards, after the press conference. And, you can go watch that online. It was all pretty interesting stuff and, standard press conference, if you will. However, there was definitely a lot of, premising about the potential futures, which we'll go over in a minute. Anyway, so day 4, we had the weigh-in. And I tell you what, this is when it started getting a little bit intense. Ooh, very interesting. So what happened? They obviously done the face-off, intense, crazy-eyed Jai's sitting there staring at him, that predator vision. I'm like, my God. But then, and everyone's like, oh, I got under his skin. Nah, I think it's just dialed in. They got close. You get close to this guy, he's a fighter. He's a killer. And let me tell you right now, he pushed off and they obviously got their heads and they're pushing against each other. And then all of a sudden Dave broke away and turned away and smiled. I'm like, oh, there's a potential win there, like a mental win. I don't know how much weight you put into that. However, it was very interesting, I found, and pretty intense. And it popped off on TikTok. And we definitely do have TikTok now for our little short videos and things like that. So get around it. Very interesting. Then afterwards, on that day 4, there was a cocktail party, the promoter VIP cocktail party for Tasman fighters. Rocked in. It was up there in Gold Coast, Glasshouse, I think, up there, the island, I think it is. Very, very nice venue. They had the seafood, they had the whole lot. Eddie Hearn sitting there chopping it up, all the commentary team, Charlie Parsons, Johnny Fisher as well from the UK, who just fought on the Usyk Fury 2 undercard. So it was great to meet him and all these really, really interesting guys. And you just chopping it up with all the media guys as well. And it was very, very interesting to talk about that. And like you get a little bit of behind the scenes things like, oh, what do you reckon of this? What do you reckon of that? And people exchanging, opinions on fights and fighters and potential future fights as well, which you've got a few little that have come out. That's very interesting, which I'll premise with you in a second. Then finally we had the fight day, the fight night. Very, very interesting because we also saw some famous, and it was like essentially everyone famous in the fight game in Australia came to this fight, and this fight night was hectic. And when I say hectic, it was so many people there, so many, the who's who essentially of anyone that's thrown a punch on any level of fame and popularity in Australia. So some of the people that we saw George Kambosos. I remember rolling in, and like a lot of people know him, and Jackson John England, who was a fighter in Australia, as we told before, he said, "Oh, listen, come talk to George. Come talk to George." And as we know, George Kambosos, beat Teofimo Lopez. For those who don't know, and he's like a bit of a star, if you will, in Australia. And around the world, essentially. And we met him, and he was a very, very nice guy. Obviously, has his persona. He's got his fight, the fight week mentality when he's coming in, but he's very good at talking and very good at self-promotion, which is why he's so popular. And he obviously backs it up with some pretty good fights that he's had. This particular fight night, it was sold out at the exhibition centre or something in the Gold Coast, and all the supporters for Jai OPETAIA were there, and it was all happening, man. Let me tell you. This would be maybe the biggest fight ever to happen in Australia if it wasn't for George Kambosos and bringing David Haney over when he was unified champion there. So this was a big deal, and I think Jai is on that trajectory to start selling out stadiums. Anyway, so we had George Kambosos. We got a photo. Happy with that. Then we saw Volkanovski, UFC star, who actually grew up in the same town as myself, down in Wollongong, New South Wales. Then there was Sonny Bill Williams. I remember walking back in. I was out doing something in the foyer, then I came back in, and I'm walking around, and I was like, "Oh, is that Sonny Bill Williams? Is that who that is?" And then he kind of turned for some reason. I'm like, "Oh, it is." And then I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know what to say. Like, I didn't know he was going to be there." And I'm like, "Hey, you Sonny Bill Williams?" And he's like, "Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm here with the family." And I'm like, and we're walking now, and I'm just like, "Oh, that's cool." So awkward. I'm like, what am I doing? At least ask a question, at least ask for a photo or something. But there's proof. There's no proof, but you know what I'm saying. I met him, and I'm like, a unit. Like, you see people online, you see people like on TV and stuff, and you're like, "Oh, you look pretty big." But let me assure you, Sonny Bill Williams is a unit. And for those people who don't know who Sonny Bill Williams is, he played professional NRL for the Canterbury Bulldogs here in Sydney. Then he played for the All Blacks and won a couple of world championships with the All Blacks playing rugby. And he also dipped his toes as a professional boxer. This guy is maybe one of the best athletes of all time, no matter what sport or part of the world that you come from. But it's just really, really interesting to see him. And I'm like, oh, that's really, really cool. Anyway, what we can say, when David Nyika came out, this guy was booed so heavily. But let me tell you, because we spent the week with David and his team talking, learning more about him, watching him train, we had less sort of exposure to Jai because he's living up there at the moment, has his own areas. We got a little bit of a soft spot for him. All right. I love Jai OPETAIA, and like, here's the proof. All right. I have my Jai OPETAIA t-shirt on right now, as we can see, ladies and gentlemen, and still the IBF cruiserweight champion of the world, ring included, lineal. We're big fans of Jai, but there's something personal with this one as well. And we're like, oh, David, yeah, he has a potential here, like, it's early in his career, only 10 fights, but hey, he's got big pedigree. Let's see what happens. It could shock the world. We don't know. As a result, what happened, we all know what happened. Jai OPETAIA, and still the champion. However, when he comes down, we had very, very close ringside seats here. And it was really funny because this wasn't necessarily what I was expecting, in the sense that, I expect him to keep it long because Jai OPETAIA is that mid-range fighter that will eliminate you and grill you in that mid-range area. So it was fun to see him come in, clash, and it was very much a Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson type of game plan where they were bullying him. Now, I know live and not live is a different... you see it differently, right, between not live and not live. But live, it looked like he was bullying him a little bit. He was pushing him back. You know, he's the bigger man. He had quite a few inches of height on him. And I was like, this is a good game plan. And he struck Jai on top of the head with a left hook or something, and it rattled him a little bit. But, geez, Jai just looked at him and he goes... smiles, that crazy predatory smile. Is like, yeah, that was a good shot. Let's keep going, brother. And I'm like, oh no. Anyway, it kept raging on, and then essentially what happened was it was only a 4-round fight, right? So essentially I think he kept it at that medium range. And what happened, it was Jai came in, stepped over the top, hit him with that overhand right, started rattling him, and then, as we know, he hit him with that left hook as he was going down against the ropes there, and Dave hit the ground pretty hard. And because we had that close personal relationship with him, like to a degree, you know, like we had a soft spot for him. He went down. I went, oh my God, is he all right? You know, like I felt like there's some kind of connection there, and it was concerning. You know, usually when you watch fights and you don't know these people and you just watch them from home, like, you know, any casual fan would be, you're like, oh, what a mad knockout, and it was. However, that was a bit of an X factor there. I was like, oh, geez, I hope he's all right, you know. And me coming from a medical background, I'm like, in my head, I kind of knew he'd be okay, and the paramedics were there and his team was there immediately to render that aid. However, there was still that sort of low-level concern for everybody. I think with the fight as well, what was very evident is that the footwork differential here, that Jai has that in-and-out footwork, and he's absolutely ready to go, and he's booming. Business is booming for Jai right now, and that's possibly a knockout of the year candidate immediately straight away, because it was spectacular. It was very much a Manny Pacquiao versus Marquez there. Oh, he ain't getting up, Jim. That's what it felt like, and it was an exciting fight night. Some other guys that were on the fight card as well, and this goes to show what was so interesting is that Australian boxing is on the up. And you've got guys like Tim Tszyu and George Kambosos from the, you know, let's call them the older generation, which really started sparking alive. And to this day, I think that George Kambosos was the catalyst to start this revolution and renaissance of Australian boxing. However, we saw some stars coming through on this particular one. On this particular fight card, we saw Justis Huni there. Now, not particularly big heavyweight. He's like, I'm not a big heavyweight. But if you stand next to the bloke, the guy's big guy, right? Like he's like 6'4", 6'3", whatever. But the explosivity, the agility, the mobility of that man, I'll tell you what, watch that name. He's already a star in Australia. I think he was tipped to get gold in the Olympics, but a hand injury prevented him from. But very interesting fighter, and he disposed of his opponent very quickly. It was a mismatch essentially, and it's going to take someone of pretty substantial skill to take down Justis Huni right now. And listen, big shout out to Max Money McIntyre. He fought this German-Turkish guy called Saman, and they were fighting for the IBF Pan Pacific Super Welterweight title. And let me tell you, Max is a really big super welterweight, like he's like 194 centimeters or something like that, and he's going to cause some big dramas. That pull-out game that he's got, that the fade counter, and it's just elite. And it was a more of a competitive fight than I did think. I know Saman had 4 weeks, his coach was telling me, of training camp before that, but he went hard. He went real hard during that 4 weeks, and he gave him a good fight, some good counters, some good left hooks in there. And, I think it was a really nice matchup by Tasman fighters, to push this young fighter into the higher levels here, give him some tests, and that was really, really interesting. Now, the Teremoana, the Australian Olympian here from Campbelltown, big shout out to Campbelltown. This guy is a beast. This is another Australian fighter that has the potential to make heavyweight champion. Now, I'm not saying he is going to be heavyweight champion, all right? That's obviously a very hot thing right now. But this guy's skill set is 198 centimeters. I've got a photo with him, just to give you a reference. I'm like 6'4", and this guy is like a beast, all right? And his hands are really, really quick as well. Like, him on the pads is actually something to watch. And obviously power and that accuracy and that delivery system, if you will, to deliver that right hand. And he put down Ottaba, who was a very, very swell guy, very, very kind man. He was also a guy from Germany fighting out of near Frankfurt, I believe. Anyway, what's next for Jai OPETAIA? That's what everyone's asking. And there's a few rumors circulating, which is interesting. One particularly interesting rumor, which I think it makes a bit of sense, is that there's the Beterbiev OPETAIA matchup at 200 at cruiserweight. So if Beterbiev beats Bivol, could potentially go up and fight Jai OPETAIA there. And then obviously there's Ramirez that wants it. That makes the most sense, which probably happened in Saudi Arabia. And you know, that's going to be an interesting matchup because Jai OPETAIA is this elite mid-range fighter with power to put you to sleep, as we saw. And there is the potential of a styles make fights in the sense that Ramirez is a really, really good inside fighter and has that ability to, and high volume, and has that ability to close the distance. He's very big as well, and potentially, you know, anything can happen there. It's going to be who can implement their style first. So that's very interesting. With Beterbiev and OPETAIA there, if he beats Bivol, goes up. I mean, what a fight. Both men, big power. Knockout is bound to happen. However, that ability for Jai OPETAIA and that explosivity that he has and that quick footwork, I might have to give it to Jai in this spot. And that's just not because I'm having a Jai OPETAIA t-shirt right now supporting my boy, but there's potential of it being a really interesting fight. Some other ones is that also, I know they wanted to pull the brakes a little bit on Justis Huni. All right, they're like, okay, you know, get some injuries right. Let's get right sort of thing. Let's start his career over again, if you will. But, you know, let's make sure we're developing in the appropriate way. This man has a skill set to go really, really high. But him versus Moses Ituma is something on the horizon, according to Eddie Hearn and according to a few of the rumor mill, if you will. So that fight is going to be a big, big clash. And we could see that at the end of 2025. We could see it early 26. We'll see how things pan out. But, man, that is a big, big fight. Now, final story of behind the scenes. So afterwards, you know, all the Tasman fighters and Amanda from Tasman Fighters, they go, listen, no, come back. Let's go and get an interview and stuff like that. And I'm like, yep, absolutely. Let's go and see the champ. All right, I got a photo with his belt and all that. We're having an interview. I asked him a few questions, you know, and it's the first time that I got a smile from Jai. I'm like, oh, do you expect him to fight like that? He turns to me and he gives me a little smile. I'm like, oh, good, he doesn't hate me. And then afterwards, he doesn't like talking about previous fights. And then afterwards he goes, but hey, that's it from the last fight. No other questions. I'm going to now, you know, run to the next one. I'm all about unifying. Ramirez, I'm coming for you. And I'm like, oh my God, he's back in there. Eyes, the crazy eyes again. I'm like, oh God, I'm getting nervous again. Something's sweating. It's not, is it hot in here? Is it just me? Anyways, then Eddie Hearn comes in, he starts doing some interviews. I'm like, all good, you know. But what I had to do, right, I had to kind of sit there, and because Jai was here, right, and by the nature of where I was next to Jai, and then Eddie Hearn came in next, I had to get the microphone. I had to put it kind of like over Jai, kind of like that. And Jai was here, and he looks at me like this, and he corrects his seat, you know, like I'm over him, you know what I mean? And he gives me an elbow on the groin. I was his second victim of the night. And he just looks at me again. I'm like, oh no, he definitely hates me for sure. He's like, give me the looks like, fuck bro, back up. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy is the real deal, man. And then I got a little interview with Eddie Hearn, see what he had to say about everything. But no, it's all in good fun. Probably just a bit too close to the big champ. That's when I got the photo with the belt, and he was like, yeah, all good, man. And like Jai is a nice guy outside of that fight week and all that. But he's the real deal. His upside is one of the biggest fighters in the world. And after that knockout, my goodness, Ramirez will be a bit nervous. I have no doubt. And apparently Oscar De La Hoya is on the phone to Eddie Hearn, and they're like, let's make that happen. So again, definitely interesting. Behind the scenes, everyone's so human. Everyone's very, very polite. Thank you very much for Tasman Fighters for having us. Thank you very much for Eddie Hearn for the interviews. I wasn't nervous. I was excited. A big shout out to Charlie. and Johnny Fisher. These guys, great guys and great interviews. Until next time, this is N Still Boxing, and that was Behind the Scenes. Until next time.